You thought you knew I Love Lucy. You've seen the grape stomping the chocolate factory, the unforgettable laughs. But there was one powerful moment that happened when the cameras weren't rolling. A moment that no audience ever saw. And once you learn the truth behind it, it might just change the way you see Lucille Ball forever. Let us know in the comments, have you ever teared up watching I Love Lucy type 1 for yes or 0 for no, and stay with us. The beginnings of a comedy. On October 15, 1951, when I Love Lucy was originally shown on television, no one could have foreseen the profound impact that this straightforward sitcom would have on the television industry. Not only was the program a success, but it was also a cultural phenomenon that, at its height, attracted 60% of households in the United States. There are an astounding 16 million people who are addicted to their devices every single week. In spite of the fact that we all remember laughing, and the classic events that occurred there was something that was developing in the background that nearly no one paid attention to. Not only were Lucille Ball and Daisy Arnaz excellent entertainers, but they were also pioneers who advanced television in ways that continue to have an impact on shows even today. Through their firm Dazaloo Productions, they not only starred in the television show I Love Lucy, but they also owned the show. They were able to exercise an unparalleled level of creative power, which was something that the majority of performers could only dream of at the time. Lucille Ball's transition from the film industry to the emerging medium of television was initially a hazardous endeavor. Nonetheless, it ultimately proved to be one of the most astute career choices in the annals of entertainment history. When Ball was genuinely on the fence about making the change, she had a dream about her late friend and fellow comedic actress Carole Lombard, which ultimately inspired her to go ahead and make the transition. That dream was the turning point in television history. The comedy I Love Lucy was not just hilarious, it was also a game changer. It was the first written television program to be recorded in front of a live audience utilizing a 3-camera configuration, and it served as the model for practically every sitcom that came after it. How come? Due to the fact that Desi thought that Lucille would have a greater performance if she had a live audience observing her. The great success that the program would go on to achieve in syndication would be directly attributable to this choice. However, what no one paid attention to was the building friction between the actors and CBS, which would eventually lead to the popular program being abruptly and unexpectedly canceled without any prior notice. Behind the scenes, there are tensions. Behind the scenes, things were anything but easy, despite the fact that fans were falling in love with the crazy antics of Lucy Ricardo and her Cuban bandleader husband Ricky. Because Desi Arnaz was so good at managing his company at Dazaloo Studios, he frequently skipped rehearsals and script readings. He was noted for his excellent recall. It was incredible to see that he would still show up to set knowing not just his own lines, but also the lines of everyone else. Despite the fact that this made him an essential component of the show's success, it also meant that he would be absent for a longer period of time. There was a significant amount of strain placed on his marriage to Lucille as a result of the time that he occasionally spent drinking and becoming connected with various other women. Nevertheless, the actress did not consider the alleged adultery of her husband to be the most pressing issue despite the seriousness of the activities that he had taken. It was getting more difficult for Ball to deal with the executives at CBS. They were concerned that anything that was too daring may anger the audience or the sponsors, so they continued to try to minimize the show's comedic content. It is important to keep in mind that this was the early 1950s, a time when it was deemed scandalous to show a pregnant woman on television or to hear the sound of a toilet flushing. After Ball's actual pregnancy was included into the program, a rabbi, a priest, and a preacher were called in to assess each episode to make sure that it would not be offensive to anybody. The requests that were made by the management of the network infuriated both Ball and Arnaz significantly. The issue at hand was not only one of censorship, rather, it was controlling. The management at CBS desired a show that was safe, predictable, and would not upset either the advertisers or the audience. However, Ball and Arnaz were resolute in their purpose to produce something novel and unique, something that the audience could identify with and relate to. On the set, every aspect was carefully considered, and there was no room for speculation or improvisation. We never improvised as we were putting it together on the set, as Ball disclosed in a subsequent statement. In no way did we improvise. All of the syllables were written down. This methodical approach to humor was groundbreaking, but it also meant that there were ongoing conflicts with the upper management of the network about the content. Despite the fact that these fights were gradually wearing out the crew that was behind the program, no one paid attention to it. And although the performers were battling for creative control, those tensions began to seep into the narratives of their episodes. This led to sequences that no one understood at the time, but which would eventually alter the audience's view on the show as a whole. Keep watching, because this one-off moment between takes wasn't just emotional, it was the beginning of the end. And if you're a classic TV fan, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a hidden gem like this again. The episodes that raised eyebrows. I Love Lucy is known for its renowned Vitamia to Vegemin scene, which is considered to be one of the most cherished episodes of the show. During this sequence, Lucy becomes more intoxicated while filming a commercial for a vitamin tonic. During the shooting process, viewers were unaware that Ball was actually sipping apple pectin rather than alcohol. A number of years later, she said that despite the fact that the sequence went on to become one of the most hilarious moments in the history of television, she did not like the process of filming it. This episode pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable on television during the 1950s. There was a lot of danger involved in showing a lady becoming intoxicated, even if it was an accident. The management at CBS were concerned about the responses of the sponsors, but the program ended up being a huge success according to the viewers. Both Ball and Arnaz were inspired to take their humor to even greater heights as a result of their accomplishment. The now iconic moment of Lucy stomping on grapes was included in another well-known episode which was titled Lucy's Italian Movie. The majority of viewers did not pay attention to the fact that Ball came dangerously close to passing away during the filming process when she began choking on a grape by mistake. I was scheduled to get a blow to my head. No, my head did not come up at any point. She held me down by giving me a chokehold. Due to the fact that they incorrectly believed she was only acting, the team did not instantly recognize that she was in actual trouble. They did not run to her rescue until after the cameras had stopped rolling during the event. These occurrences bring to light the laborious physical requirements of Ball's humor. Ball plunged herself wholeheartedly into the realm of physical comedy in contrast to the majority of television actresses of the day who played the role of subdued and respectable housewives. In order to get a laugh, she would do anything including falling fighting, getting covered with chemicals, or contorting her renowned face into absurd faces. She would do anything to garner a laugh. Her dedication to her profession earned her 4 Emmy Awards out of a total of 13 nominations she received over the life of the program. However, this dedication did not come without a cost. Exhaustion was the result of the physical toll that was taken by doing such rigorous humor week after week. The pressure was beginning to show both on and off the air, and it was a combination of other factors including the ongoing conflicts with network officials on programming. The contentious moment that nobody paid attention to. There was an event that took place in 1953 that practically no one paid attention to at the time, but it was eventually acknowledged as a significant occasion in the history of the television show I Gotta Love Lucy. A brief off-air interaction served as a clue to the rising conflict between Ball and CBS over the bounds of comedy. This moment occurred during an episode that was very unremarkable. The scenario in question depicted Lucy reclining on a couch, obliviously reading a book while eating a banana. This image is very similar to the one that you could know from advertising materials. The audience was not privy to the events that transpired in the instant before the filming began. The officials at the network decided that Ball's version of the scene, which had physical humor and was far more risque than the one that was intended, was not suitable for family television. When she turned around, she saw a CBS person dressed in a suit standing behind her. This individual had just informed her that her initial idea for the scenario had been rejected. With a professional demeanor, Ball was enraged. She performed the watered-down version that was broadcast, but those who were there on set that day remember her right eye twitching with barely held rage. This was a tiny detail that the majority of viewers never saw, but it became indicative of her mounting dissatisfaction with network meddling. This issue was not limited to a single scene. It exemplified a basic dilemma over the regulation of creative expression. The two actors, Ball and Arnaz, were confident that they knew what the audience wanted and were ready to go to any lengths to fulfill that desire. CBS, which was worried about the image of the network as well as the advertisers, made consistent efforts to rein them down. No one was paying attention to how this battle of wills was affecting the future of the program, since it was taking on behind the scenes that nobody was watching. Even in a comical setting, CBS was adamantly opposed to allowing any kind of reference to this subject whatsoever to be made on the show. As far as Ball was concerned, this was the most telling indication that the network did not have faith in her comic talents. The fact that these tensions behind the scenes would eventually lead to the unexpected finale of the program was something that nobody recognized at the time. The groundbreaking moves that changed TV. During the time when the tension was rising behind the scenes, I Love Lucy continued to make significant strides in terms of its screen presence. When Ball's actual pregnancy was interwoven into the plot of the program, it was one of the most groundbreaking events in the history of the show. During the early 1950s, this was something that was almost unheard of. Even the mere act of uttering the term pregnant on television was regarded as insensitive. As an alternative, the show had to rely on anticipation. There were millions of people in the United States who watched the episode of Lucy Goes to the Hospital that brought the birth of tiny Ricky to the world. This show's cultural significance was proved by the enormous number of spectators it attracted. On the other hand, the majority of people were unaware of the fact that this episode also left an indelible mark on television in a different way. Arnaz wanted to allow his wife time to heal at home after Ball gave birth to her real-life baby, Daisy Arnaz Jr., so he decided not to record the next episode of the show. Furthermore, he was successful in persuading the network to replay older episodes, which essentially led to the invention of the television rerun. The economics of television production would be revolutionized as a result of this breakthrough, which would ultimately result in Ball and Arnaz becoming wealthy from the syndication rights. In the background, yet another revolutionary action was being carried out, although at the time, very few people were paying attention to it. Something that was almost unheard of in the early days of television was the fact that Ball and Arnaz had successfully acquired ownership of their show. They settled on the choice to establish Desilu Productions and to keep the rights to I Love Lucy, which would ultimately result in a net worth of roughly $40 million, which was a substantial fortune in those days. Ball and Arnaz were not only excellent entertainers, but they were also pioneering business geniuses who recognized the future of television as demonstrated by the shrewd and forward-thinking judgments that they made. The reaction, however, came along with that triumph. On the other hand, the mounting tension simply put additional pressure behind the scenes, and CBS management started to feel unhappy about the amount of control the pair had. The tension starts to become apparent. By the time the 5th season of I Love Lucy rolled around, cracks were starting to appear both on and off screen. It was becoming more difficult for everyone involved to keep up with the unrelenting pace of generating 39 episodes every season. Making people laugh was the only objective of the television show I Love Lucy. Lucy imbued it with a distinct character. She is capable of doing the most outrageous and even the messiest examples of physical comedy without losing her allure as a woman. Both the performers and the crew were worn out, and it became more difficult to come up with new ideas. Not only was Arnaz's drinking issue becoming worse, but it was also getting more difficult for him to conceal his infidelity. The actions of Ball's spouse left her in utter disbelief, but she remained resolute in her commitment to continue the program. Despite the fact that the majority of viewers never paid attention to these small alterations, their off-screen relationship troubles started to permeate into their on-screen chemistry. Additionally, the pressure was seen in the relationships that existed between the other members of the ensemble. In spite of the fact that William Frawley never missed a day of work despite the fact that he enjoyed drinking alcohol himself, the hostile connection that he had with Vivian Vance continued to cause friction on the set. It was stated that Vance had a stipulation in her contract that obliged her to maintain a weight that was at least 5 pounds higher than Lucille Ball. This added to the strain that was already there behind the scenes. It was a peculiar and illuminating element that brought to light the insecurity and competition that were hiding beneath the surface of the show's outwardly positive image. An incident that occurred during the production of an episode in the 5th season offered a particularly illuminating example. Because of the cue cards that were utilized on set, Ball was able to forget her lines for a little while, despite the fact that she was emotionally fatigued and annoyed by the interference caused by the network. As an alternative to simply editing and reshooting the sequence, she devised a comedic face expression that was used in the final edit. Even though the crowd was roaring with amusement, those working on stage saw it as a sign that she was becoming more exhausted. The physical demands of Ball's comic style were also gradually becoming more difficult for her to maintain as she grew older. In addition to requiring a significant amount of energy, the falls, battles, and physical gags that had become her signature sometimes left her with bruises and soreness. Despite this, she was adamant about not toning down the physical humor that had made the program such a success. The conversations that were taking place behind the scenes over the future of the program were growing increasingly contentious. Despite the fact that CBS intended to keep airing the popular series for an indeterminate amount of time, Ball and Arnaz were beginning to think about other options. Because of the ownership structure that had made them affluent, they were also given the authority to decide the future of the program, which is something that the majority of television stars could only dream of having. Despite the fact that no one paid attention to the hidden meanings that were occurring behind the scenes, the program was being pushed toward a finale that would stun both the industry and the television public. The breaking point. I love. Lucy was about to start its 6th season, and the breaking point was getting closer and closer to being realized than anybody understood. Following the production of more than 150 episodes, the creative team was having difficulty coming up with new plots. Everyone, especially Ball, who was the focal point of practically every scene, was feeling the effects of the exhausting physical and emotional demands that the production schedule imposed on them. The animosity that existed between Ball and CBS about the management of creative content continued to boil. Ball's proposal of an episode that included a veiled allusion to the Red Scare, the political scandal that had at one point placed doubt on her own reputation, was the source of a particularly intense disagreement. In spite of this, CBS promptly shut it down. The executives were adamant that a humorous family sitcom should not have any aspects of politics, even if they were just marginally political. For Ball, it was simply another one of many maddening reminders that the network did not respect her vision for the program or trust her creative instincts. During this time, Arnaz was devoting less of her attention to I Love Lucy and more of her time to overseeing the expanding Desilu business. During this time, the production firm had seen a significant expansion, producing other shows and maintaining a studio lot. This commercial triumph came at a personal cost for Arnaz, as his absences and infidelity grew more regular as a result of his professional success. At the time, nobody paid attention to an important discussion that took place behind the scenes between Ball Arnaz and officials from the network. It was made quite apparent by Ball at this discussion that she was not willing to sustain the demanding schedule of a weekly series for an indefinite period of time. She suggested switching to a format that was less demanding, such as airing occasional specials rather than weekly episodes, which would give her the opportunity to relax and pursue other creative pursuits simultaneously. It came as a complete surprise to the management at CBS. I Love Lucy was their most popular program, and it was also a huge moneymaker, with major advertisers such as Philip Morris and Procter & Gamble financially supporting it. They were so determined to maintain the status quo that they offered Ball additional compensation and other benefits, but she refused to budge from her position. The levels of tensions that existed between the stars and the network had reached a point where they could no longer be contained. As a result of the fact that they were the proprietors of the show, Ball and Arnaz were in a position to be able to walk away rather than continue working under conditions that they deemed to be unsustainable from a creative and personal standpoint. CBS, which was facing the possibility of losing its most popular show, grudgingly started looking into other options. What the audience did not realize was that while they were enjoying the comedic moments of the 6th season, the conclusion of the program was far closer than anybody had openly admitted earlier. The sudden and unexpected conclusion on May 6, 1957. The last episode of the television show I Love Lucy was shown. The Ricardos dedicate a statue. It was in this episode when Lucy made the hilarious mistake of smashing a monument that was intended for a ceremony, and then she proceeded to pose as the statue while wearing stone makeup. Despite the fact that it was a good and humorous episode, there was no indication that it was the final episode of the series. There were no emotional farewells, special farewells, or awareness that this was the end of an era. There were no particular goodbyes. This is due to the fact that nobody, not even the actors and crew, had been informed that this would be the last episode of the series. Following the unexpected conclusion, the audience was left astonished and perplexed. What could have caused the most popular program on television to end without any prior notice or a fitting conclusion? The fact of the matter is that Ball and Arnaz had taken the choice to discontinue the weekly series format, but they had not planned to completely cease their involvement with television. They reached an agreement with CBS to switch to the Lucy Daisy Comedy Hour, which would contain the same characters but would be broadcast for a longer period of time and with fewer repetitions. By reaching this balance, Ball would be able to take a break between shows while still ensuring that the characters remained dynamic for the audience. What nobody was paying attention to at that time was the fact that this sudden ending was a reflection of the reality that was going on behind the scenes. While the program came to an end without a conclusion, Ball and Arnaz's marriage was also getting closer and closer to its conclusion. The strain of working together while their personal relationship was falling apart had reached an intolerable level. Both the preservation of their marriage and the revitalization of their creative process were important factors in the decision to switch to a new format. Ball was utterly heartbroken when the weekly series came to an end, despite the fact that he had initiated the transition. According to her memoir, she was so overcome with the emotional effect of breaking away from the persona and routine that had characterized her life for the previous 6 years that she spent days sobbing on the couch of a friend with whom she shared a couch. A betrayal was felt by fans since there was no fitting conclusion to the show. Both CBS and Desilu received a flood of letters from fans pleading for the program to be brought back and questioning why it had stopped so suddenly. Even in the present day, historians of television continue to point to I Love Lucy as an example of how a beloved series should not be terminated without providing viewers with the satisfactory conclusion they need. Even while it was amusing, the last episode did not provide any indication of the seismic shifts that were taking place off the air. The fact that no one paid heed to the minor indicators that may have suggested that this was the end may have been due to the fact that people did not see any of them. On the other hand, this simply served to enhance the anguish experienced by all those involved, including the cast as well as the audience, some of whom continue to miss the play even to this day. The legacy that lived on. Despite the fact that I Love Lucy came to an abrupt end without a suitable conclusion, the show's legacy was far from being finished. There was a reappearance of Ball and Arnaz with the Lucy Daisy Comedy Hour, which aired for a total of 13 episodes between the years 1957 and 1960. Despite the fact that this format allowed for more breathing room between productions, it was impossible to recreate the enchantment that was there in the first series of television shows. A big kiss between Lucy and Ricky Ricardo was featured in the final episode of the Lucy Daisy Comedy Hour, which was titled Lucy Meets the Mustache. A sense of resolution was achieved through this touching scene which was absent from the first series. It is noteworthy that Ball filed for divorce from Arnaz just a few days after recording this episode, which meant that it was their last appearance together on TV. One could not have foreseen the way in which I Love Lucy would continue to be broadcast in syndication. Desi's insistence on utilizing those pricey 35mm films made it possible for the show to be replayed with flawless clarity for a number of decades. New generations were introduced to Lucy's antics, and they quickly fell in love with them, which ensured that the show would never be taken off the air. The television career that Ball continued to pursue was marked by amazing success. From 1962 to 1968, she was a main cast member on The Lucy Show. After that, she appeared on Here's Lucy from 1968 until 1974. Although her final try at a sitcom, Life with Lucy, which aired in 1986, was not as successful as her previous attempts, it did highlight her unwavering dedication to the medium of television humor. When Ball took over Desilu Productions, she made history by being the first woman to independently oversee a major television studio. This accomplishment happened after Ball's divorce from Arnaz. As a result of her leadership, the studio was able to develop a number of successful series, one of which was Star Trek, which Ball herself rescued from being canceled by executives who believed it would be too expensive. As great as her comedy abilities were, her business acumen was equally impressive. It is impossible to overestimate the influence that I Love Lucy has had on culture. More than any other star, Ball's visage was featured on the cover of 39 different television guides. There are over 40 million people in the United States that watch episodes of the show on a yearly basis. The show is still broadcast in syndication across the world. Our collective cultural memory now includes phrases, jokes, and moments from the program that we have learned to recognize and appreciate. What was initially a straightforward sitcom went on to revolutionize television forever. I Love Lucy was the first television show to demonstrate that a woman could be both gorgeous and hilarious. It also pioneered the configuration of 3 cameras live audience shooting and syndication. As a result of depicting a pregnant lady and an interracial marriage during a period when both of these topics were contentious, it pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable for family television. In the most essential way, it demonstrated that television could be a form of art in addition to being a kind of entertainment. The painstaking physical comedy, the careful drafting of every line of conversation, and the true emotional connection between characters all contributed to the creation of something that went beyond the restrictions of early television. Despite the fact that the program was abruptly taken off the air, its effect did not cease to exist. Lucy Ricardo and Ricky Ricardo continued to live on in our hearts and on our screens, serving as a reminder of a period when humor was not only physically engaging but also emotionally profound and revolutionary. Despite the fact that hardly one paid attention to how much I Love Lucy would transform television for good, we are still seeing the effects of its influence today, more than 60 years after it was first broadcast. It's not just a happy ending. It's a legacy that will last for generations to come, and very few television series will ever rival it. We can't help but wonder how the history of television could have been different if the conflicts occurring behind the scenes had been addressed in a different way. This is something that we can't help but think about as we reflect on this wonderful show. So the next time you watch I Love Lucy, remember this. Behind every laugh was a woman fighting for her family. Behind every joke was a man struggling with guilt. And behind the magic was a moment the cameras missed but the heart never forgot. Which scene from I Love Lucy is your favorite? Was it the chocolate factory, the grape stomping, or a heartfelt moment? Let us know in the comments. And if you love behind-the-scenes stories of Hollywood legends like this video, subscribe and hit that notification bell because we've got more timeless secrets coming your way.